Hey, everybody, welcome back to another Minds of Mortgage podcast. This is Kelly Yale, and I am so excited to be joined today by Scott Reese. He's the Senior Vice President and Regional Manager over at Rate. Not only is he a father, but I found out he has a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He is a very inspiring and honest content creator on LinkedIn for the entire mortgage industry. And I am really, really delighted to have you today, Scott. Welcome to Minds of Mortgage.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate the opportunity to come on your podcast and to answer any questions you have and tell you a little bit about, my journey in the mortgage industry. And I know from talking offline, we have some similar stories. So thank you again for giving me the opportunity. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, let's start right there. Let's start with, I love to ask people how they kind of ended up in mortgage because everyone kind of has their own unique story.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me how you got into this field and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I'll go back. I went to college, was born and raised in New Jersey, about 45 minutes west of New York, came to Baltimore for college, went to Loyola, got a finance degree, took a job with a bank up in New Jersey called NatWest Bank. And I was in their call center learning the ropes. And long and short of it was they got bought out by Fleet. And then they said, hey, you can go to Wall Street, you can go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, where our new headquarters is going to be, or you can take a severance and go somewhere else. So I basically got laid off. And, a friend of mine was working at Norwest on the consumer finance side back in Baltimore. So I moved down, started working for Norwest Financial and closed my first mortgage within 60 days, started from scratch, had to pound the phones, worked my way up to branch manager within about 18 months, then became a district manager. Eventually moved over to Wells Fargo Home Mortgage, was an area manager in the Baltimore area for them, and then went to Elite Funding, Mariner Finance, and then over to Rate. And I'm thrilled to be back and, looking to take the region to the next level in this crazy world that we're in right now called mortgage.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I've been a regional manager twice, right? And
Right.
Many of the questions that I have for you today are around what you speak about a lot on LinkedIn and what I'm pretty passionate about, which is what kind of leader people truly need. And I think that we have all had our fair share of working for leadership that maybe doesn't align with us. But I'm fascinated to know what you think the mortgage professional truly needs from their leader in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think it's a combination of skill sets. I think number one, especially in this environment, we went from feast in 2021, the first part of 22, to the industry falling off a cliff. And the last 3 years, I think, have been the most challenging. Like, I personally feel like the last couple years have been more challenging than the Wall Street meltdown. So I think right now you need a good listener. You need a manager that's going to listen because everyone has other stuff that's going on in their lives as well, besides the mortgage world. And you have to listen and get to know your people a little bit to find out what makes them tick. So I think listening is important. I think you empathetically have to hold them accountable. So what I mean by that is part of the listening is getting to know your people. You have to be present to do that. If you're a cowardly leader and you're hiding when there's difficult news to be given out there, or this time of year, a lot of people are kind of in holiday mode already. You got to be on the front lines with the troops. And when I say being empathetic, but also holding them accountable, you have to remind them, like, you have goals to hit. I have goals to hit. I understand what you're going through. I can relate to that. I may have been through something like that in the past. What can I do as your regional to help you, to mentor you, to train you? What else can I do to help you be successful and help you hit your goals? So I think those are some of the main things right there. And then I think there's a huge credibility issue too. I decided voluntarily to stop originating a few years ago. So I'm not as involved in the frontline activities, but I'm still on the front lines. So instead of going on the front lines to originate the loans, when my loans come in, I'm handing them off to the other originators, but I'm constantly asking for feedback. I'm sitting there. Sometimes I'm jumping on the hand grenade so that it's not hitting my employees. But a lot of times I'm sitting right next to them in a foxhole and I'm asking them, what do you like about this system? What do you like most about the CRM? What else can we be doing? What else can I be doing to help you be successful in your daily activities? So I think all those things matter. It's a combination of things, but it all comes down to listening and being present. And I would say that the thing that ties it all together, Kelly, is in my world, we're all equals. Male, female, gay, straight, black, white, Asian, Hispanic. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's what you bring to the table. It's all about the skill set. I treat everybody equally. I've always had very diverse teams without trying to hit some sort of a quota out there. And people feel very comfortable with that. And I think they appreciate the fact that I keep it real. And I think that's very important today. There's some wonderful leaders out there that manage the same way. I think there's a lot of other people that don't do that. And that's why they have exceptionally high turnover.
You know, you said so many things in there. I could go down so many paths.
Sorry.
No, you know, it's great. It's so great because I want to touch on accountability, but I also want to talk about, you know, one of the things that I think made me a special sort of regional manager, because I was over the East Coast of sales. And one of the best parts about me was that I had never originated. Right. And the reason that it ended up being sort of a help to me is, as you know, when one of your branch managers is hitting a wall, or one of your leaders is kind of hitting the wall, or they're running up against an underwriter and they just can't get something pushed through, it was always a blessing to me how dumb I got to act, right? Because I would just be like, hey, can you walk me through this? Because, I'm just marketing. I don't know what I'm talking about. And so it was actually a really great way to sort of enter those conversations without somebody feeling threatened. And then they were like, well, here's why this is. And then the loan officer could come back and say, but this is also how it is. And so that was kind of my secret sauce when I was in there, was acting like, maybe explain it to me like I'm not a loan officer. And a lot of times it would uncover the problem accidentally.
Sure. No, that's interesting.
And you said accountability.
Yep.
I've been here 12 years. I don't know that I've seen a real desire to hold sales accountable to a certain goal or certain anything. Do you find accountability to be somewhat lacking in different places?
I think it'll vary from company to company. Every company I've been with has had minimum standards that people need to meet from an accountability standpoint, whether you're an originator or a manager above, regional, probably all the way up through C-level. I haven't found it hard to, because once again, if you go back, if you get to know your people, if you take the time to get to know your people, they understand that your heart's in the right place and you're trying to help them. It's not of, oh, well, Scott doesn't like me or Kelly doesn't like me, and they're trying to hold me accountable because they don't like my personality and they want to get me out of here. That's not what it's all about. It's about getting the results. At the end of the day, the impact on the originator's family is greater than the impact on me or the owner of the company, all the way up the chain, everybody else involved. Like, they're commission-based loan originators. If they don't close loans, they don't make money. So I want to do everything I can to help them support their family, their lifestyle, and so forth. And sometimes the sad reality is, and I've had multiple people over the last few years, and even in the last 90 days, a lot of people reached out to me and just said, you know what, Scott, I'm just spent. I'm tired. Sure. I used to have the drive. My boss is coming to me now. I need someone to hold me accountable because I've gotten content. I made so much freaking money in 20 and 21 that I kind of took my foot off the gas a little bit the last few years. I thought the market was going to turn like everyone else did. It never did. So I want that accountability. So that's what I'm finding, Kelly, is there's some people that are they just want to get out of the business. They're done and they need that accountability manager. But I think the majority of the people are like, even some of my top originators are coming to me saying, I'm telling them, you're doing great, but I could be doing better. And I know you're going to push me. And when I say accountability, it's not just going to them and saying, hey, you're already crushing your goals. It's in a professional way, in a friendly way, saying, sure, you know what? Here's the top 10 list for the region. You used to be in the top 5. How can I help you get back there? they're super competitive. Now they're getting pissed. They want to get back to where they were. So in a friendly way, most super successful competitive salespeople thrive having other like-minded people surrounding them because it pushes their game up to that next level too. So I see accountability in two ways. How can you be accountable for crushing your own personal goals? And then there's the accountability that I think a lot of companies have to look at too, is the low performers. If they're not there, what can we do to either lift them up? And if they're not going to make it in as professional as a way, let them know that maybe this isn't the right industry for them anymore. So I've never had a problem doing it.
Nor I. I mean, but I was also always serving strategy, right? So every week I was serving the strategy. Here's how we're going to meet the market this week. Here's the message you're going to put out, all these things. So I technically I always believe that we either don't give the people the tools or the training that they need to be successful. And that at the end of the day, the accountability actually lives with the leadership, right? Because someone isn't successful because you're not giving them what they need to do their job, or showing them and mentoring them in ways that'll help them grow. And so, but I feel like you and I, this is really the first time you and I have ever spoken to one another like this. But we've been connected on LinkedIn for a really long time, and our message is very the same when it comes to, how to build a successful team and how to have empathy for the things people are going through. So I'd love to know, for those people who are thinking about building a team, like, how do I build that successful team? Where do you think that starts?
You're talking more like a branch manager, like if they want to turn an originator and they want to get to that next level. So I think a big mistake that our industry makes, and look, back in the day, I was a top originator when it allowed me to move up. But I was also trained and mentored by some great people. And I think that's the thing. There's two things that have to come into play here. If you're an originator that wants to go from being just an originator to a sales manager, branch manager, area manager above, you need to have the skill set, which I'm sure all these people have. They're great salespeople. They have to have the motivation, which they have. I think the area that we struggle as an industry the most in is the mentoring and the training. And one big thing that I'm hearing right now throughout the industry, which I think is attracting some people, to my company right now, is there's a lot of status quo people. And I'm just going to throw this out there. There's a lot. Our industry is still an old industry. I'm in my mid 50s. There's a lot of people that look like me in the industry. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. All I'm saying is a lot of people have made a lot of money and had a lot of success, and now they're just riding it out. How does that benefit the people below you that want to move up? That person that you just mentioned, Kelly, the bright, super motivated originator, female, male originator that wants to get to that next level. If that person above you who controls your destiny, or maybe influences your destiny is a better term, is kind of in the status quo and is just riding out the last few years because they've already got all their money and everything's just perfect now, how does that benefit that person? And that was a big question I had when I got back in, is, do I want to go out on my own and just do some leadership training and coaching and recruiting for several different companies? Or do I want to jump back in and make a real impact in people's lives? And I think you could see the choice I made. I still have a lot in me. I didn't come back here to be average. I came back here to be extraordinary. But the best way that I become extraordinary is by going out and helping every single employee below me crush their personal and professional goals. And mentoring and training is where a lot of that stuff comes into play. And I personally believe that the industry does a poor job overall with that. And that's why you hear the term, oh, well, they got promoted because they were a good salesperson, but they have no people management skills, or they're lost. I mean, I'm sure you've seen this in your career too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've often referred to it as the curse of the mortgage industry, and it's because you have these bright, exceptional people, right, who are truly great at sales, but there's only one career trajectory, or two. You can stay in sales, or you can kind of climb the corporate ladder. And the thing about that is, as soon as you become a branch manager who does not do loans anymore, right? If you don't do loans anymore and your job then is just to recruit, you're fine selling other people to work into the branch. But there's
Yeah.
no kind of school of business for how to run a P&L, how to understand what makes for good recruiting, how to mentor and train people. So if you don't have that skill set naturally, while you may be great at bringing in loan officers to the
Mhm.
company, it gets really challenging when you're 5, 10, 15 years away from origination, right? You may or may not be that good at talking tech. You may or may not be that good at understanding tech. And yet now
Yeah.
you're in a position where you're supposed to be leading the charge of something that you may not be that great and skilled at mentoring in.
Yeah.
So that can be tough. But I also wanted to ask you too. So on that topic, right? The trickle
Yeah.
down message right now for all leadership down to the branch managers is go recruit. And what do you tell a branch manager who doesn't feel successful recruiting or is nervous to start? Where do you tell them to start?
I think you have to start with your warm list. I mean, if most branch managers have, well, I take that back. You might have someone who's relatively new as a branch manager. I always go back. I call it the wedding list. I go back to my originating days and like that Todd Duncan philosophy, the high trust sales of, you're going to go out, talk to people on your wedding list. If someone else was going to pay for your wedding today, who would you invite in the industry? And I would look, who are your peers in the industry that you like, there's a mutual respect for, and maybe start with that and have those casual conversations. I've been recruiting since 1996. I've never been a hardcore recruiter. And what I mean by that is I'll do some text messages, I'll do cold calls, I do a lot through LinkedIn messages, but I've never been like, I'm just going to throw an offer out there to somebody and see if that responds to an email. I'm not faulting people who have success with it, but I think what I've been able to do is try a lot of different things. So I would go to that manager and say, hey, look, what are you doing right now that's working? What are you doing that you're not having success with? Let me share with you some of the things that I did when I was a 26-year-old manager. That's a lot different than now when I'm a 54-year-old manager. I learned a lot between 26 and 54. Don't make the same mistakes that I made. So I think a lot of what I'm talking, this is probably the second answer I'm giving you that goes back to mentoring and training. It's like, you got to you have to be present. You have to take the time to ask that individual manager. So if I have 5 managers and I want to ask each one of them, what do you like the most about recruiting right now? What is your approach? I might have 5 different philosophies and approaches, and I need to be able to adapt to that and read it. Me personally, Kelly, I've always kind of taken the forefront for recruiting because I think there's 2 different types of managers that are out there. And even in my group right now, I have some managers that like recruiting, but it's a small percentage of what they do because they're producing at a pretty good clip right now. They might be throwing 30, 40 million a year up there. And then there's other managers that are kind of like myself, quote unquote, non-producing managers where they're still licensed. They may do a few loans here and there, but their focus is really on training, mentoring, developing the team. And that's one of the things that I'll say to a prospective new manager is, how much production do you want to do? Because the audience that you're going to be going after, you may have a loan originator that's going to come on board that says, hey, I like your company and I like you, but I'm going to need a lot of your attention right away. And if you're trying to throw up 20 or 30 million, you're probably not the right manager for me because I'm going to need a lot from you in that first 30 to 90 days. So I think there's a lot of those type of questions that we as leaders need to have those conversations with our employees that are managers or prospective people that want to move into a management role and find out, where do you want to be? Are you still going to try to do 50 million in production and grow a 10-person team? Because that's hard to do without something given. So that would be my recommendation.
It's so true. And look, sales is sales. Recruiting
Yeah.
is sales. I mean, it's sales. But fundamentally, what I know I've been yelling about for a decade and many others have been talking about forever, which is everything is going to be built upon the back of a relationship. right? You don't just walk in and get in a relationship with somebody. You have to nurture that relationship over time. And sometimes you're not going to have that ability to do so, if you're meeting a recruit for the very first time. But it is in how you take every step after you meet them to show them, this is not, I'm not connecting with you to jump in your DMs to tell you that we should meet for coffee so I can tell you all the things, because we're already aware as salespeople that we're being sold. But if you go into it and you say, I am a resource for you moving forward. I want to get to know who you are, and I want to actually understand you as a person, because to come into our company, it's special, right? We take special people and we want to have a relationship with those people before you come in. I mean, the way that we can create these conversations in a very different way, I think, is going to differentiate everybody, especially as this next 6 months is probably going to be another pretty ripe season for recruiting.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's happening right now.
100%, and not to be like whatever about it, but look, likely the choice that someone makes in the next year is going to be the choice that they're going to, like, I'm going to move to this company, I'm going to retire here, right?
Sure.
That really, I humbly would say, is going to be the next. I would always look at wherever I was moving as the last place I'm going to work. And that's how I believe originators should be approaching this next year, is to say, because so much will change and shift. And by the time we get 3 years in, wherever you are and whatever technologies you're in, the chances are those are going to be so dialed in that moving will almost be, I don't think you're going to want to move again, is a good way to say that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
When you said, talking about sort of the wedding guest list, I call it the Golden Girls list. So like if you threw up this, and how I tell originators, right? If you threw a party, invited everyone you knew, how many of those people would show? And everyone's always like, oh, I got a database of 5,000 people from the last 20 years. And I'm like, no, you don't. You definitely don't have that. So let's talk about what it is that you do have, which is an incredible skill set for sales and also good relationships. And let's talk to you about how you foster those relationships better, so that 5,000 yields an amazing amount in the future. So I think it's all about how you create those relationships. Do you have sort of a secret sauce when it comes to, how you tell people that they should approach either the relationship with their agents or their relationship with their database?
Yeah, I think it's similar. I think, the relationship, you can almost look at it from recruiting to their referral partners to the past clients. It all goes back to relationship versus transactional. Transactional is so impersonal. It's like, hey, all I'm thinking about is what I'm going to make on this loan or what I'm going to get out of this relationship. Where I go back to when I was an originator, and it's like, I'm going to give this person the best deal possible and know that this may be the only loan I do in the lifetime, but they're going to be so wowed with the service that they're going to refer their friends, their family, their coworkers, all those different people to me over the next 20 years. And I'll be the first person that they're going to talk to. And I look at it the same way, whether it's a referral partner that, and I'll throw this in too, Kelly. The word reciprocal is so important today, because this industry has some wonderful people, but it also has some extremely selfish people in here who don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. And whether it's the clients, the referral partners, or even some of their own employees. And it's sad, but it's true. And I've witnessed it. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this probably have at times too. Any relationship. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's so interesting that you say this, because one of the top female originators in the country and I just had a conversation, and she was talking about how she was with a group of really successful loan officers who sat around for an hour talking about how much they hate working with realtors.
Yeah.
And she was like baffled by it, right? Because she puts so much work into the relationships that she has with her agents. And so she said, here I was on the complete opposite side of that. She said, but I just couldn't believe how much they were talking about it, because that's going to be the lifeblood of stuff moving forward, unless you're going to move into consumer direct.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you have to do it, and it can be reciprocal. It can be, and I think it goes back to using the Ford model, getting to know them, what makes them tick, their family, their dreams, what they like to do when they're not selling homes, or if it's a potential recruit, when they're not doing loans, like what's most important to you. And we as individuals, whether it's an originator with a referral partner or past client, we're the dream makers. We're the ones who are going to make that dream become a reality for them, whether it's taking that first time home buyer. I used to love that. That was honestly, I know sometimes this could be more challenging loans. I used to cherish going to settlement and have held their hand through the whole process, and then sit across the table and see the keys get handed to them and how happy they were. Because even if there's some little potholes or roadblocks in the process, when it all comes together, the emotions all go to a really good place and everyone feels really good. And then it pays off because you get referrals and stuff and so forth out of there. But, go back to that term reciprocal, because I think in this industry right now, that's really what you want to focus on. And I think a lot of loan originators, it's something I'm going to be, talking to my team we have a big mastermind event coming up in January for our region. And one of the things I want to talk about is, don't be afraid to have the tough conversations. People are going to try to take as much as they can from you. Sometimes that's the referral partner. There's nothing wrong. Like an example would be, maybe you have an MSA and you're not getting as much out of it as you like, and you're paying $2,000 a month. Well, what are you okay paying? Maybe they're okay paying $1,000 a month. Well, I can't have that conversation because then I might lose it. You have to go out and have that conversation and say, look, I really value this relationship. I appreciate all the the loans that have come from this relationship. I'm going to continue to do everything I can to help both of us thrive here. But in the current economic environment and where our industries are, it's pretty tough right now. Wouldn't you agree? Yes. Can we do this? I have a proposal for you. I want to continue to work with you. Can we cut this back? Can we scale it to 1,000? And then we'll re-examine this. We'll look at it every 6 months. And I think that's part of where the problem is you have to be able to have those tough conversations. But I think you have to be honest with it too and say, look, I'm really interested in a reciprocal relationship. It's like, people are going to come to me. One of the first questions I ask every recruit, Kelly, is, even if you're not reporting directly to me, what are the top 3 things that you need from me as a leader? And I write them down. I've got every recruit I talk to. I'm kind of old school. I have a computer system that does it too, but I have notes on paper. And I remember that. And then when they're here, I go back to them and say, hey, you've been here for 2 weeks. You're off to a really good start. You thought you may not hear from me again, because a lot of companies do that. They recruit you and then they vanish in the thin air. And I follow up. How am I doing on this? How am I doing on that? So I think it's important to do that, whether it's with your employees, your current employees, potential recruits, when you're following up in that first couple weeks, couple months that they're on board. And certainly with clients and referral partners, stay in front of them and let them know that hey, I appreciate your business. I appreciate the opportunity you gave me to help you buy that dream home. Who else? And then ask for referrals too. That's the other thing we don't do a good enough job as an industry of asking for referrals. Even if we have a CRM that's blasting people and sending updates out there, I'm old school, Kelly. Like, take this thing right here, pick the phone up and call, especially this time of year, or text them and say, hey, happy Thanksgiving. The next 3 days, I would be sending every one of my past clients, if I haven't done it already, a text says, happy Thanksgiving. I appreciate your business this year. If you ever have any questions or know of anyone else that's looking to purchase or refinance a property, please feel free to pass my contact information on. And I think we could do a better job with that. So, and look, I've messed up with that in almost 30 years in this business. There were times where I got so busy with other stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I did this person's loan. They loved it. I just called them up to do a refi. They went with someone else because I didn't call them in time. So I think staying in front of them is super important right now too. And, I know I bounced around a little bit there on that answer, but I think it's important to cover those things right now, because These are the things that I'm hearing from recruits as well as my current employees that are most important to them in this environment. Like, what tools, what philosophies can you provide? What training can you provide that's going to help me overcome the struggle that I'm facing right now? I'm used to closing 5 to 6 loans a month. I'm struggling to get to 2 or 3 now. What would you suggest? These are all little things that I think will make a big difference.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a great lead into the next question, which is, what are you telling the people who work with you, anyone at the company, any originator? We've been white knuckling this now for 3 solid years, right? But we've got probably another 3-6 months ahead of us where it's probably still going to be pretty tight. How are you keeping those loan officers engaged and inspired to keep going?
I'm staying in front of them. I'm communicating on a consistent basis. So a lot of the stuff that you see on LinkedIn, I'm obviously utilizing internally too. That's not some shtick that I do on LinkedIn. It's like, that's me. That's who I am. It's authentic and real. So I'm staying in front of them. I'm not telling them what they want to hear. I'm telling them the truth. Like, a lot of people were worried, like, go back a couple months ago, like, oh my God, we're in an election year. We have an election coming up. Let's see how the markets react. We've kind of seen how the markets are going to react. I'm a complete optimist, Kelly, but I am also a realist, and I'm sitting back and saying, I agree with what you said. I think we have the rest of this quarter and at least the first quarter that we have to assume it's going to be very similar to last year. It could potentially be even more challenging. And you got to hunker down. You got to stay positive. And I think the activities are key. One of the biggest things that I'm telling people right now is it's Monday, November 25th. In 3 days, we'll all be celebrating, Thanksgiving. And this 6-week period between today and the week of New Year's is what I call the 6-month holiday slowdown. This is typically when most salespeople in mortgage and across all the other industries in corporate America kind of like wind down a little bit, So the biggest thing that I'm telling everybody is grind. Like, I'm taking Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off. I'm going to work my tail off today and tomorrow. And I'm going to recharge, refresh, spend time with my loved ones. I'm going to come back like a bat out of hell and grind like a warrior next Monday, all the way up to, Christmas time. Because if you're in the mortgage industry right now and you're sailing right now and you're, take time off, it's all important. But you want to have a solid pipeline set up before Santa Claus goes down the chimney on Christmas Eve. If not, you're going to be chasing your tail all of 2025. And the reality is there's a lot of companies. Look how, I know there's been some profitable quarters over the last few quarters this year. But if you look at the last 2.5 years in this industry, we've never seen anything like this. There are, whether people want to hear it or not, I tell them the truth. There are owners of companies that are sitting back right now deciding, what do we do if this happens or if this doesn't happen? And you're going to see some more. There are M&A discussions happening right now. There are warehouse line discussions happening. There are a ton of originators that on November 25th still have not done their CE and renewed their licenses because they're not sure of what they're going to do. And part of that is they're not getting communication from the people above them. No one's reassuring them that the company is okay. We're giving you competitive rates. We're giving you the products. We're giving you the leadership, closing loans on time. All those things matter. So I'm trying to, on a consistent basis, do that. And I stay engaged with my group. I send a question of the day every day, which is like a mix of different things. I try to avoid sex, politics, and religion, but anything else is fair game. And it allows me to engage one-on-one with the employees as they respond. And then I do a monthly town hall here. And then I do a monthly mastermind call where, just last week, we had a lot of the top originators on the call. One of them shared something that allowed another top originator who thought he had lost a loan to go win the loan. And I told one of my recruits about that, and they were like, that is amazing. Nothing like that happens at my company. Now, I'm sure it happens at most companies out there, but that's my point, Kelly, is I got to take time off just like every employee. Like, you should take time off. I'll take time off around Thanksgiving, Hanukkah for our Jewish friends, and Christmas and New Year's. But in between those holidays and when our family is visiting, you got to go out there and grind. If you turn it off right now, you take your foot off the gas, you're going to set yourself up for a very challenging 2025. So that's the message that I'm hopefully driving clear, not just for people that know me, but for any of your listeners that don't. I've lived this. I've done it before. I've made the mistake early in my career of not doing it. And then I was playing catch up all year. And it was a lot more stressful doing that. If you're a football team, it's much better to go out on your first drive of the game and score a touchdown and defend the lead than to be playing catch up and try to get back to even and then score again with a field goal or a touchdown to get ahead. So I would go with my advice on that.
I love it. We could have probably another 30-minute conversation about like filling the pipeline, right? So I could not agree more with the concept of always nurturing leads for the pipeline. And we tend to take our foot off the gas, right? It used to be a huge joke for many, many years in the industry, right? Because, November 1, everyone was like, great. Hey, I made, $300, $400, $500,000 this year. I'm taking the next 2 months off. And then January 2nd would be new year, new me. Where are my loans? And you're like, but for the last 60 days, you were all over the place shopping and doing fun things. And when you don't do the activities that are needed, then January is going to be kind of bleak. So will February. And Q1's already hard enough. So by the time you take your foot off the gas, you're 4 months, like this is, you just have to do the things that are going to feed you tomorrow sometimes. Right. And that's just what we have to keep our eye on during this time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Well, Scott, look, I so appreciate your thoughts on leadership. And the one thing I will say is that very few people that I believe in as content leaders on LinkedIn say the things that we're all thinking. And so if you guys don't follow Scott on LinkedIn, I'm going to tag him and let you guys kind of follow him and listen to some of the things he says. I really appreciate your thoughts on leadership today and your thoughts on the future. And I'm just super grateful that you joined us today.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate the opportunity and appreciate you. And I hope you and your family have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and everybody listening as well. Have a great Thanksgiving and happy holidays to everybody. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Yep.